I saw that you have risen and you're shining. We're rising to shine, right? Super. Great. So, we're going to have an exciting day today. I know some people are leaving today, but some people are also connecting, getting to know more people. And we're now going to go to a very important session on AI, imagery of persons with disabilities. Have you Googled an image of a person with a disability on AI? How many of you have done that? Can we see hands? Yeah. We see some hands? Okay. What is it normally that we get? As good as AI is, with all its great importance to persons with disabilities in terms of giving us access, in terms of removing barriers, in terms of really bridging the gap in communication, we understand that AI is not meeting its promise when it comes into representative image of persons with disabilities. We are either narrowly represented, or we are misrepresented, or sometimes we're missing. What we see and what we don't see determines into what comes into our mind. So it's important that when we meet together like this in the Zero Project, we talk about solutions to improve the imaging of persons with disabilities in the AI world. We talk about how those representations, misrepresentations, and lack of representations matter in terms of policies, matter in terms of data, standard setting, and more. The clear message is that it's important that the AI world and people leading that sector would need to co-create and collaborate with persons with disabilities who have the first-hand lived experience in terms of really having the real representation of the imaging of persons with disabilities. And today, we are very honored to be joined by two amazing persons in this room, Sinead Burke, whom we had the opportunity to hear the first day. Can we give a big shout out to Sinead? Fantastic. Yes. Sinead is such an amazing energy source. I think we're seeing each other after 6 years, right? The first time I saw her was in Davos, but once you see her, she has an image, a power, and energy that makes you never forget her. And the other person who will be joining Sinead in this discussion today about the imagery of persons with disabilities in AI is Jenny Lee Flory. Please join me in welcoming Jenny Lee Flory. Join Sinead Burke. Yes. Colleagues, this is the last day. We need your energy. Give it a shout. Yes. Yes, thank you so much. So the floor is for Sinead and Jenny Lee Flory to take us through this very timely, important, but also quite urgent topic to be addressed. Over to you, Sinead and Jenny Lee.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, you can do better than that. It's Friday. There's about 6 inches of snow outside that nobody predicted. So we'll try it again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Well, I have the great privilege of sitting on the stage alongside somebody that I deeply admire, respect, and love. And we're going to be talking about one specific topic and then going a bit broader. But before we go any further, I'm going to do a brief visual description. My name is Sinead Burke. I'm a white cisgendered woman. I use the pronouns she and her. I identify as queer and physically disabled. I have dwarfism, and I'm wearing a full-length wool dress. And I'm sure you're thinking, did she walk in the snow in that? The answer is no. I changed unglamorously in a bathroom downstairs, so just in case you were wondering. But Jenny, shall we go to you for a visual description, and then we'll do formal introductions?
I think so. Good morning, folks. How are you? Good? Oh, I love it. Jenny Leigh Flurry. I am also sitting with someone I deeply respect, admire, and love. I am wearing a also black, it's like we coordinated, we did, a black wool dress. I am female. I am deaf. I am disabled, very proudly so, and wearing I think it's burgundy jacket. So yes, we decided to do introductions of one another because we figured that would be fun because we have known each other a long time.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Sure. I'm going to start with a more formal introduction. I think in spaces like ZeroCon, Jenny has had the moniker of Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft for over 10 years. But in case it's news to you, Jenny now has a new title. She is now head of the Trusted Technology Group at Microsoft, which is an evolution from her role as Chief Accessibility Officer. But I'm sure perhaps like you, when you maybe heard about this for the first time, you had a question of what does that mean? So to give you a sense of what that is now going to encapsulate, and maybe to reassure both the disabled community and accessibility professionals, you're not going anywhere from accessibility. But the remit of the Trusted Technology Group includes accessibility, digital safety, privacy, responsible AI, enterprise resilience, responsible business practice, and security, human rights, among even more aspects that will include a broader remit in time. But I think while that's a very formal title, Jenny has been somebody who has been committed to ensure that nobody is left behind and that technology is an enabler, acknowledging that when technology is developed, oftentimes it needs iteration, it needs evolution, and fundamentally it needs to hear from communities and for them to be at the heart and center of every practice. But I think very specifically what I admire so much about Jenny is that if you're a young disabled leader, there's every likelihood that you have had 30 minutes or 3 hours with Jenny where she will impart wisdom, ask you challenging questions, but even more, give you the confidence to think that you can be sitting in her chair in 6 months, in 6 years. And I think when we think about disabled leadership, which is what I talked about on Monday, we need to develop critical paths in order to develop that disabled leadership. And I think you're one of many who are architecting that every day. So that's my introduction. Your turn.
All right. My goodness, I can't do better than that. So I actually asked, as you would expect me to, as a nerd who's been at Microsoft for 21 years, I asked Copilot to generate a description of my introduction of Sinead Burke, which I will give you with a little bit of ad lib, because you know her. She was here in the opening. Sinead is a globally recognized advocate, educator, and CEO whose leadership has transformed how we think about design, accessibility, and belonging. We're pretty good so far. Founder of Tilting the Lens, which is now 5.5 years old, folks, and partners with some of the world's most influential organizations. True. Some of you will know her from her extraordinary TED Talk, Why Design Should Include Everyone, which reached millions and sparked a movement. But others may know her as someone who appeared on the cover of Vogue, which, true story, I spent 2 days finding every single one of those Vogue covers. And I had to go into 15 different stores to find. Or her work with the Met Gala. What do I admire? I'm going to leave you the rest. Copilot does a pretty good analysis, but I will say what I admire the most is we talk at least every month, sometimes more often, is how she authentically, pragmatically leads disability inclusion across industries that many of them have no longer and have never thought about it. And so it's been a privilege and an honor to get to know Sinead as a human and a friend. And we're going to dig into a little bit more than that before we get too gushy, because we can tell you so many stories, which might not be appropriate for the stage. But we are going to talk about some that we have co-created together. We're going to talk about technology. And maybe, should I start by giving a little bit of what is trusted technology?
Please.
Just to get going.
Yeah, I think give us a sense of what is trusted technology and also what is responsible AI. You know, having been here for the week, there's been many ways in which AI has shown up in the conversation here at ZeroCon. Some with leading entrepreneurs creating AI solutions that are going to remove barriers and create greater access for disabled people. But also there have been conversations around risks of AI or environmental impact of AI. So I think this is a good time for us to go up and go broad and talk about responsible business and responsible AI. That would be a great sense.
And just to give you a sense, I am in a new role at Microsoft. I have just spent 10 years as the Chief Accessibility Officer. And my new role, which is I am on week 3 which clearly means I know everything and absolutely nothing at this stage. What it means is that I have the real privilege of now working with a bank of incredible leaders who lead areas like digital safety, responsible AI, responsible business practice and human rights and privacy. And so I'm now working alongside my old peer set to really work on what is trust and trustworthy technology. I think this is an important thing in the era that we are in as AI and technology is very fast evolving. And yes, I am. Before I got this question as the minute I walked in the door, are you backfilling? Yes, I am. So I'm also interviewing and talking a lot with this next generation of talent, one of whom will become the next Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft. More to come on that. But I'm excited. I think we've built so much momentum in accessibility, a long journey that needs to continue in a decade. We've learned a lot, and now I'm able to look and leverage that learning as we look at these broader areas.
We're going to come to AI and imagery and representation for disabled people in just a minute, but I want to drill down into that point of trust. From your sense, how do we build trust? How do we keep trust? And maybe in thinking about the communities that we have here, how can we ensure that trust is not a one-way relationship? There is trust and accountability that sits with us all, but how do you define that?
Well, this is where I have props. I mean, I think Tilting the Lens is doing a very good job of if you haven't seen some of what Sinead has been doing with Tilting the Lens, I just love the front cover because I think it says the answer to this. Co-designing adaptive fashion with, and that should be almost bolded and underlined, the disability community. I think Microsoft is and has been aiming to do the same thing. I think when I came into this role 10 years ago, Microsoft was 20 years into their then journey on accessibility. And we had to really think about how to build systems that will work at the level of scale we're at today. It's been a slow journey, but there are some pieces that I think are essential that become really important as you then think about the broader remit of trust. You have to build with the communities that you serve. You have to show yourself and prove yourself to be listening to the feedback as you build, as you launch, as you have people using Word and PowerPoint and every different product that we have out there. And you also have to embed. Accessibility is not optional. Every single employee at Microsoft is trained on accessibility. And so I think there's systems at play. And I think those systems transfer as we think about the era that we're in and some of my now broader remit with responsible AI, privacy, and more.
And maybe if I could take it from the large infrastructure of Microsoft as a multi-trillion-dollar company and selfishly maybe bring it down to a team of 7 based across Europe. Because I've been fortunate to meet lots of people this week and be really inspired by the work that they're doing. And somebody asked me a question of, great, you can design with disabled people, but what does infrastructure look like in your business, in your organization to ensure that disabled people can thrive now to quote Disability Culture Lab. And even to think about that, you know, when we do recruitment processes, we ensure that we are asking people and communicating what accessibility accommodations are available from the job description level, from the earliest of outset, ensuring that in terms of building trust, it's ensuring that the labor is not on the disabled person or the marginalized person in order to communicate what they need in order to be successful, because that takes energy, time, money, whereas everybody else just gets to enter into the workforce without having to do that labor. But the same with thinking even about how people can be successful in their day-to-day jobs. We have a majority disabled team, but even thinking about things like we have disability leave. We have a well-being allowance where everybody accesses therapy every month in order to be able to support their own well-being. And I think building trust sometimes is said as if it's easy, where the reality is it's about changing systems, policies, and practices, but also catching it every day in the behaviors that show up. But I think we need to get to imagery, and I think we need to get to AI imagery, and in terms of responsible AI and where we're at with the storytelling of representation of disabled people in AI imagery at Microsoft. So,
and I do want to touch on this as we do move to AI. You know, the systems that you build to hire, to empower your disabled talent at a small company size, and then a large company with 228,000 globally, those are utterly essential to make sure that what you build as an output is accessible. And I think they're equally hard, building those at scale, building those. And I have to give credit. If you want to know how to build this within a small company, go to Tilting the Lens. If you want to know how we're building at Microsoft, I think our neurodiversity program is well over a decade old now. We've been doing this for some time. We're public in any and all of the best practices that we've learned, often by making horrible mistakes, because perfection is never the goal, but progress is. Yeah. Those are all available too. And I think that has to be some of the approach as we think about AI. And I do think that AI is kind of the fascinating moment. It's not a new technology. 1954, I think, was the first system. But it is a Dumbledore library, which is the picture on the screen, and what I imagine to be a Dumbledore library of data. That is what is powering AI. And I think the main essence, and where we've had many, many conversations, and there's one that we will specifically talk about, is how can AI propagate or mitigate or even change mindsets when it comes to the lens of disability, just recognizing that there are representational harms. These are material, these are real. If you take the Dumbledore library is being trained on websites, on data that is freely and globally available. Most of those do not have the representative view, as you and I know it, of disability today. And the results, some of the pictures on the screen up here, are symptomatic of that. The depiction of someone who is blind as wearing almost a ski goggle, because that's how blind people walk around. And no, that is not the case. If you are looking to build a picture or understand what a person with intellectual developmental disabilities, that often comes back also not just as a misrepresentative lens, but also white and male. And so how do you really think about this becomes incredibly important.
And I think the example of the Dumbledore's library is really key, because when we think about AI as an acronym, which stands for artificial intelligence, while it can be considered a form of intelligence, I think what's important to remember is that it's a large language model. At least some of the models are. And what that means is making predictive models, either in imagery or in text, based on everything it has eaten to date. So if you only eat fries and schnitzel, like me last night.
We both ate fries and schnitzel.
It
was really good.
The next day, you're going to predict fries and schnitzel. I'm really going deep on a metaphor here that's not very helpful. But in the sense of it being a large language model, it can't predict what it hasn't been fed. And that is indicative of the fact that so much of what exists, from websites to technology to texts, have been excluding or have been harmful to disabled people, or there isn't enough mass material designed by disabled people. And that's what we're trying to fix in real time so that it can be more accurate, whilst also ensuring there's a pipeline of disabled leadership, disabled engineers, and disabled talent to not always be fixing, but to be proactive and ensuring that the tools, the instruments, and the systems are better by design.
So as we think about this chapter of AI, generative AI, where it is sucking in Dumbledore's library and putting output, you are using the books on the shelves to create content. How do we make sure that that is then accurate and representative? So this starts in November 2022, as many of you will remember, and the first product that Microsoft put out with generative AI was actually a product that I spent 7 years working on, because I'm older than Sinead, which is Bing. Who's heard of Bing? Oh. Thank you for the 2 people that put up your hands. It's actually a really fun search product. And we put it out where you could put in different descriptions and you could create your own imagery. So you could say, hey, can you give me an image of me as a sassy Brit who is deaf and disabled. I like sneakers. I'm not wearing any today. I'm wearing boots. But and it would create an image of what that would look like based on the books that we had given it access to. So then you start to think, okay, well, which books are you referencing? Are they fair? Are they inclusive? Are they trustworthy? And in fact, there are 6 principles to responsible AI. And so there's guardrails that we can start to think about this AI. We can start to be really thoughtful about the books that we are giving AI access to. Are those harmful? Are those representative, authentic, and really clearly depicting? And all of this work is part of how we build these AI models. Then comes a text message and a conversation with Sinead Burke.
So to your point, let's go back to 2022. If you were me, you were at home in Ireland, living in the spare bedroom of your parents' house, trying to ensure that you weren't irritating them and that they weren't irritating you, and spending far too much time on the internet, at the time I think it was Twitter, and seeing this new tool announced about image generation and thinking about the opportunity of it. So within the tool, I put in a prompt. Create an image of a white woman with dwarfism with short brown hair, wearing a black leather jacket, black jeans, and a pair of Gucci loafers.
You were quite specific on the leather jacket.
I'm quite specific about my wardrobe in general. AI is no exception.
I love it.
So I want you to think about what kind of image it potentially generated. Do you imagine it was a positive image? That's a leading question. But do you imagine it was a positive image in 2022? It was awful. It was so awful, it was really upsetting. It was every historic depiction that exists of people with dwarfism, of people with short stature, from what felt like 100 years ago. And here we were in a modern era, and yet that's what was being fed back to me. It wasn't personal, but it felt personal. And because it felt personal, my immediate response was to send Jenny a text message in all caps, which I'm going to acknowledge I have the privilege to do. And I reached out to Jenny and I said, hey, I've put this prompt into Bing. This is really not good. And this is not about me. Because I'm fortunate that I have the resources, the family, the friends, the partner, therapy to be able to build myself up. But I think about others who have less, who will do this looking for a sense of confidence, and what they will be met with is the opposite. And I was so grateful that you responded saying, hey, this is not cool. This is something that has to be fixed and will be fixed. So I'm going to throw back to you, because that's my half of the story. What happened then?
So I get this text message, and Sinead gave me the prompt, which is the important thing. I want to be able to understand what that prompt was. That kickstarts my team. I shared it very quickly and said, okay, folks, let's go. And we started doing our own prompts, really understanding what were the books that it was referencing, how did we need to put the right horcruxes, the right ironclad around some of those books, making sure that where we didn't have the right books on the shelf, this is far too many books, I'm realizing.
We're deep into this metaphor here.
Then how could I buy new ones? How could I make sure that we had the right and accurate understanding of not just Sinead Burke, but disabled people? And so it's been a long journey of understanding and really making sure as we build our models, which are evolving quickly. There's not just large language models, there are now multiple different models, that we do put the right guardrails in play. And the thrilling part is that it's having an impact. So I put 4 images on the screen. The one on the left
is the new prompt.
It's the new prompt. This is exactly the same prompt that Sinead put in actually it was 2023.
2023, yeah.
And this is the new result. And I will tell you that there are profound differences in what you can now get. And there's a lot of magic behind it. What we did is work with Little Persons of America. We worked with multiple different sources and experts to garner that data to put the books on the shelves. So the picture that you can see here that was generated by Copilot is a gorgeous image of a little person sitting, wearing a very cool leather jacket, on a Zoom call with her team.
And it's very specific, because again, when we think about the generalization that often happens with generative AI, for example, it was really important that the model was fed large volumes of visual material to get to that specificity. So maybe to give some context, I have achondroplasia. That is the most common form of dwarfism. I'm going to spell that for the interpreter. achondroplasia. Achondroplasia. As I said, it's the most common form of dwarfism. Whilst my torso is average height, my limbs are shortened. But particularly for image generation, what is specifically important is the facial characteristics. So I have what is called a larger forehead due to having achondroplasia, but also a very specific type of nose. I have a button nose with a shortened bridge. The majority of people who have achondroplasia have those facial features. I also have smaller hands, but they're not just smaller, my fingers are much more shortened. If I clench my knuckles, you can't see them. I don't have enough motor dexterity for them to come visible. So when I think about the evolution from 2023 to 2026, yes, we could get a better image. But representation comes from specificity. Representation comes from an exacting nature that allows people to feel seen. We've all seen versions of imagery, or whether that's in fashion magazines or in AI, that feels more like us, but the specificity that AI allows, I think, will create that greater sense. But there is more work to do.
There is. The other 3 images on here is how we've taken it further into other classes of disability with clearly much more to do. We have worked with organizations on autism, Kilimanjaro Blind Trust, and many others on blindness and low vision, and also on Down syndrome and intellectual developmental disabilities. And there are 3 representative images. And each of those, if you try Copilot today, which I suggest you do, for those classes, you will see, she says, with everything crossed, far more representative, authentic results. However, I want to acknowledge, we've got to keep going. And so you'll see this work continuing to phase out. The good news is that AI is moving very quickly. And so as we now have this muscle, again, a system, an operation to how to approach it, we've learned the methodology. Now we can take it to other classes and start to scale.
But let me ask you a question.
Yep.
So everybody here has now got homework to go to Copilot,
Yes.
to go to a generative AI tool. And it would be interesting actually to use, you can't say this, but I can, to use more than one generative AI tool to create different imagery and then compare them. But the thing that I think it's really important that people hear is that this is not a Sinead and Jenny solution or fix, or you have to have access to Jenny in order to be able to create these solutions. So if people go and create an image of a disabled person, apparently or non-apparently, using Copilot, and it's not what they think or feel it should be,
Yes.
what do they do? What does this audience now go and do?
Please do not send me an all caps text message.
I was 2023. It was tough times. Okay, like I'm giving myself some credit here. Okay, it was a pandemic.
But I do. One, I think Microsoft, as one of many companies, we want and need that feedback, and that's where the channels exist to pull it in. So I would say, please lean into the channels that we have. Please, if you get a bad result, don't sit on it. Share it. We have a team. Who's heard of DAD, my DAD team? Oh, that was one strong hand.
Oh, two?
Two? No, I see you over there,
Three.
Mr. Scott. Okay, so all of you, I want you to pop this into your notes. Disability Answer Desk, DAD, D-A-D. This is my technical support team. It has been around since 2013. We take up to around 10,000 calls a month from disabled customers around the world. It is free. We do have a direct video ASL channel as well. It is there if you need support in any kind for anything technical Microsoft. It is staffed by the most amazing humans. It is led by a disabled team. And we want and need your feedback. One, they can help you. I mean, one of the things, and the reason we actually started this desk, is because disability is the one gig you can join, and most do, during through to accident and injury. And often their first question is, what tech is available? And so that's the most common question we get is, hey, I'm new, I've just experienced this, what should I be thinking about? But it's also there when you see issues or you have suggestions, improvements. Please, please get that feedback in. And I promise you, they're far quicker than I am on text.
Me too. So I want to just stick with AI and accessibility for a minute.
Yep.
And then I want to talk about 10 years of Chief Accessibility Officer and what next, and what that evolution of those roles, and as you said earlier, you're backfilling it, somebody's going to have that title, but what maybe you hope that means for this sector, that we're seeing succession, we're seeing progression even in that role. But let's first come to AI and accessibility. As I said, there has been a myriad of conversations as regards to AI's role for disabled people, disabled people's role in AI. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What should we be interested in, excited about, invested in, weary of, if we think about the next 6 to 12 months?
One, AI is moving quicker than any technology in my 21 years, 30 years, honestly, in the tech industry. I have never seen a tech era move as fast as this one. And that's exciting and slightly scary all at the same time. Yeah. It's moving quickly. If you thought that you knew exactly what features were available to you, I will tell you that by today it's out of date, because it's moving that fast. And what that means for disabled people is that we need to invest time. I actually tell my team, you should be spending a minimum of 2 hours a week getting up to speed with the latest developments. And so, one, we as disabled people need to be leaning in. Number two is we need to be creating even more important, like the tilting the lens advice, co-design. It has never been more important, because when things move fast, if you build in by design, you're not fixing the 50% of issues that can happen at the other end. So we've got to co-design. That becomes an even more critical component to this era. But I would say three, the dividends for disabled people, it's humbling. I started at Microsoft in London to work on Hotmail. Does anyone remember Hotmail?
Some people still have one. Look, I
see
that's a
there's more
cybersecurity
hands
issue.
than any other thing I've asked today. I am deaf. I know my speech is beautiful. It's got a British accent. I am from Birmingham in the UK. I don't have the accent. That is the gift of deafness. I used a product back then
You
called...
can hear, there was a wave of like comedy
I
and disgust as it came through there.
I love Ozzy Osbourne though. I dearly departed. I worked first on Link Communicator. For those that have as long memories as me, did not have captioning. There was no thing like transcript. I could not get a sign language interpreter to be visible on there. I honestly can't even imagine how I did my work back then. I can't envision it. How on earth did I manage a European team at the time when I didn't have a communication device that worked? Now, thanks to AI, I have captions that I can translate into languages. And I run a global team, that's helpful. I have transcript, I have sign language interpreter, I have sign language recognition, so it knows when people are using their hands, and it can really put the focus on, even when my voice is not coming through spoken, it's coming through hands and sign. That is all happened in the last 3 to 4 years. In the next 6 to 12, I expect that to advance more quickly than it has since 2022.
Even in a much smaller team, I think about the benefits that we have seen and can actually calculate because of AI. Even something as simple as, again, a majority disabled team with different access needs, the ability to be able to focus in a meeting, and we're a fully remote team across Europe, and be able to turn on an AI facility that will take notes, that will summarize, so that you can think and be present and not have to be doing admin on the side in order to be relevant, has been so valuable. We have just a couple of minutes left. So I want to ask you about the migration from Chief Accessibility Officer to Head of Trusted Technology Group. What do you hope that means for the sector, for the community, and what should we be ambitious for as we think about Chief Accessibility Officer roles continuing to grow, exist, but also evolve?
I am incredibly humbled. I was in London over the Christmas break with my family, and I came back to my boss saying, hey, let's go. And I was slightly jet lagged, and I didn't think she was real, but she was. And I am 3 weeks into this role. I am drinking from the fire hose. There's an American analogy for you. But here's what I've learned so far. I think accessibility has never been more important than it is today. Accessibility is exciting, it is cool, and it also is hard work. I have spent a decade working with the most amazing people at Microsoft, building it into the culture and the fabric of how we work. That work continues. That work becomes even more important in the era of AI because it unlocks human ingenuity. In fact, if you want to build artificial intelligence, talk to disabled people. They're the ones who can tell you how AI should evolve. What I've also learned, though, is how to build operational and scaled muscle, how to motivate, inspire, and build systems that get 200,000 people whirring on a topic that some believe should be optional. That doesn't always get the light and the lens that it should. And that is really, as I now look at other domains, that's the skill set that I have, is designing with people to build scaled infrastructures that help to make better, trusted products that empower humanity. And so I was humbled in the beginning. I will be honest, I was like, really? Really? Okay. Now where I'm at is realizing that I've had this incredible privilege to deepen not just what Microsoft does and what accessibility can do, but it's deepened me. It's made me better. And I now get to take that to a broader space. I have the terrible task, though, of going through literally hundreds of candidates right now for the next generation. And the one thing I will say is, if you dream it, do it. I started as a classical musician. This was not my dream. It became my dream. if you dream it, do it, but make sure that you spend time, as Sinead and I do, every week, every month, mentoring and working with others. We've got to help make sure that they stay sticky in every company, and we've got great talent to fill those roles.
And that people feel confident that they can do it and be it. We're at time, but before we leave the stage, and Jenny, while you are not leaving accessibility at all, except going up and being even more responsible for it, I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room who often quotes your name in rooms that you're not in, and sometimes I use that as encouragement, and sometimes I use it as a threat. In terms of just thinking of different models that work, or have you met Jenny Lefrak? Did you know Microsoft have a Chief Accessibility Officer? And while there are many businesses in particular, and now many governments, shout out to Stephanie in Canada, who have Chief Accessibility Officer roles and units and infrastructure, the path that you have walked forward in has created space for so many, and it would be remiss of me not to end this by honoring that and thanking you.
You are very kind. But folks, let me just say that we are better together. I would not be in my role doing what I do if I didn't work with amazing, amazing humans. And some of the best friends I have in the world happen to have come from the last decade in this role. And one of those is incredible Sinead Burt. Please give it up for her. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.